In the shadowed halls of Europe's grand estates, whispers of a forgotten era still echo through time. And for centuries, these magnificent monuments to aristocratic power lay dormant, their gilded splendor fading beneath layers of neglect and revolution's harsh judgment. Yet beneath the dust of ages, master craftsmen and historical visionaries saw not ruins, but possibility. Through painstaking dedication, these guardians of heritage have breathed new life into architectural masterpieces that once hosted kings and queens, imperial balls, and history-making diplomatic summits. From meticulously recreated Baroque ceiling frescoes to carefully sourced period furnishings, each restored detail offers a window into an age of unparalleled artistic achievement and aristocratic ambition. Today, we explore these reborn palaces that stand not as mere museums, but as bridges between centuries, allowing us to walk in the footsteps of Europe's most powerful families. While modern billionaires compete to build mega mansions, they're still playing catch-up to an 18th century monarch's fever dream. Indeed, King Charles VII of Naples, in modern-day Italy, created a world where more than 1,000 rooms showcased art that exhausted the talents of Europe's greatest masters, where gardens stretched so far they required their own climate zones, and where a single throne room contained more precious marble than most modern museums. An army of Europe's finest craftsmen spent decades creating interiors that would leave visitors speechless, while a 40-kilometer aqueduct fed fountains designed to make other palaces' water features look like garden sprinklers. Yet this 47,000 square meter giant, a monument to unlimited power and wealth, would face a future its builders never imagined as it was left derelict to rot away before it finally was saved and restored in the 21st century. Thus, in today's episode of Old Money Mansions, we explain how Europe's grandest palace became an abandoned nightmare before it awoke from its slumber to be a restored dream. In 1751, amid the rolling hills of southern Italy, King Charles VII of Naples harbored an audacious dream. Driven by a desire to outshine the papal palace in Rome, he envisioned a royal residence that would establish Naples as a major European power center. The result would be the Palace of Caserta, a monument to ambition that would become one of Europe's largest and most opulent royal complexes. To realize this vision, Charles VII turned to Luigi Vanvitelli, an architect already renowned for his work on St. Peter's Basilica. Vanvitelli's design was breathtaking in its scope, a palace that would serve not only as a royal residence, but also house the entire government of the Kingdom of Naples. The numbers alone spoke to its grandeur: 47,000 square meters of floor space, 1,200 rooms, 1,742 windows, and 34 majestic staircases connecting the various levels of this architectural marvel. Construction began in 1752, launching 2 decades of relentless activity. Thousands of workers labored day and night to bring Vanvitelli's intricate designs to life. The main facade alone stretched an imposing 247 meters, its presence a clear statement of royal power and prestige. Inside, artisans worked tirelessly to create interiors that would leave visitors awestruck. The finest marble was sourced from select quarries, while master painters adorned ceilings with elaborate frescoes. The throne room, designed as the heart of royal ceremonies, received particular attention, its opulence reflecting the monarchy's might. Vanvitelli's vision extended beyond mere architecture. The complex included vast gardens featuring a series of fountains and cascades that transformed the landscape into a water paradise. The centerpiece was the Great Cascade, fed by the Carolino Aqueduct, an engineering feat that brought water from over 40 kilometers away. Each element was carefully planned to create an integrated masterpiece where nature and architecture worked in harmony. In a shrewd combination of luxury and industry, Charles VII included plans for a silk factory within the palace grounds. This addition wasn't merely ornamental, but a strategic decision to boost the local economy and establish Casserta as a center of fine textile production. The palace was designed to be not just a symbol of power, but a driver of prosperity for the entire region. Tragically, Luigi Vanvitelli would not live to see his masterpiece completed. After his death in 1773, his son Carlo took over the project, faithfully adhering to his father's grand design. As the 1770s drew to a close, the palace, though still under construction, had already become a symbol of the heights of human ambition and artistic achievement. As power shifted across Europe in the coming century, this magnificent structure would witness transformations its creators could never have imagined. The dawn of the 19th century brought dramatic transformations to the Palace of Caserta, reflecting the shifting tides of European power. Under the Murat domination in the early 1800s, the palace's interiors underwent significant modifications that spoke to the changing political landscape. The Alexander Room, originally conceived as a grand reception hall, was reimagined as a temporary throne room, symbolizing the new regime's authority through its architectural grandeur. The artistic direction of these changes celebrated military might and imperial glory. Painters Heinrich Schmidt and Rudolf Surlant created dramatic frescoes depicting the capture of Capri and the Battle of Eylau on the main walls. Adding to this martial splendor, sculptors Domenico Masucci, Claudio Monti, and the French artist Durand crafted 6 intricate stucco bas-reliefs portraying episodes from Joachim Murat's life, effectively turning the palace's walls into a chronicle of Napoleonic triumph. This period saw the completion of 2 of the palace's most magnificent spaces, the halls of Astrea and Mars. These masterful projects, overseen by architect Antonio de Simone, showcased a unique blend of neoclassical elements with the empire style that had become fashionable during the Napoleonic era. The fusion of these artistic traditions created spaces that captured both the timeless dignity of classical architecture and the bold confidence of imperial power. The palace reached new heights of grandeur in 1845 with the completion of its majestic throne room. This impressive chamber, stretching 40 meters in length and lined with 28 fluted twin Corinthian columns, created an atmosphere of overwhelming majesty. In 1844, Gennaro Maldarelli unveiled its crowning achievement, a magnificent ceiling fresco titled "The Laying of the First Stone of the Royal Palace of Caserta," connecting the space to the very moment of its inception. During this era, Queen Maria Carolina's vision for the palace grounds took shape through the creation of the English garden. This 24-hectare masterpiece, designed by English gardener John Andrew Grafer in collaboration with architect Carlo Vanvitelli, transformed a portion of the grounds into a horticultural wonder. Rare botanical specimens from around the world found homes among carefully designed landscapes, artificial hills, meadows, and an intricate network of ponds and canals. The addition of orangeries and greenhouses completed this botanical paradise, establishing Casserta as a center of horticultural excellence. As Italy moved toward unification in 1861, the Palace of Caserta stood as more than just a royal residence. It had become a perfect synthesis of the arts. Architecture, painting, sculpture, decorative arts, and music through its court theatre came together in harmonious unity. Yet even as the palace reached its artistic zenith, political winds were shifting. The approaching unification of Italy would bring changes that would test the very purpose of this magnificent complex. The unification of Italy in 1861 marked the beginning of a long decline for the Palace of Caserta. The magnificent structure that had served as a symbol of Bourbon power suddenly found itself adrift in a new political landscape. As the newly unified nation established its capital in Rome, the vast complex lost its status as a center of political and social life, beginning a period of decline that would last for decades. The departure of the royal court had immediate effects. The meticulously maintained gardens slowly surrendered to nature's advance, with exotic species in the English gardens struggling to survive without expert care. The elaborate system of fountains and waterworks, which had been the pride of the palace, fell silent as the Carolino Aqueduct's complex maintenance was neglected. Paths once kept immaculate for royal processions became overgrown, while carefully planned vistas gradually disappeared behind untamed vegetation. Inside, the palace's grandest rooms stood silent and increasingly neglected. Intricate frescoes that had taken years to complete began to fade under layers of dust and neglect. The elaborate stucco work, once gleaming with gilt, slowly crumbled in the humid Italian air. Marble floors that had reflected the light from countless chandeliers dulled beneath years of wear, while the fine silk wall coverings began to deteriorate in the absence of proper climate control. World War II brought an unexpected and tumultuous chapter to the palace's history. From 1943 to 1945, the halls that had once hosted royal ceremonies became the headquarters of the Allied Forces Command in the Mediterranean area. Military maps replaced precious artworks, and military boots echoed through corridors once graced by courtiers. This period reached its historical climax on the 29th of April, 1945, when the unconditional surrender of German forces in Italy was signed within its walls. The war years took a heavy toll. US bombing raids in 1943 damaged sections of the complex, while the chaos of war led to widespread looting of its artistic treasures. Precious furniture disappeared, ornamental fixtures were stripped away, and even architectural elements were not spared. The once pristine palace emerged from the conflict bearing deep physical and cultural scars. In the post-war years, the situation grew increasingly dire. The Italian government, focused on rebuilding basic infrastructure and housing, could hardly justify the massive expense of maintaining such an enormous complex. Rooms were sealed off, windows boarded up, and entire wings abandoned to the elements. The palace that had taken decades to build and had housed centuries of history stood as a fading monument to a vanished way of life, waiting for a time when its worth would once again be recognized. The late 20th century marked the beginning of a remarkable turnaround for the Palace of Caserta. In 1997, UNESCO's designation of the complex as a World Heritage Site brought international attention to both its plight and its potential. This recognition proved to be the catalyst for a new chapter in the palace's long history, one that would transform it from a neglected relic into a vibrant cultural center. The turn of the millennium saw the launch of increasingly ambitious restoration efforts. In 2001, a comprehensive project began to address decades of neglect, tackling everything from the palace's massive facades to its intricate interior details. The scale of the task was daunting. With 74,000 square meters of facades alone, the restoration required meticulous planning and substantial resources. When the European Union's post-pandemic recovery fund allocated €27 million to the effort, the project gained the momentum it needed to match its ambitious scope. The restoration team's work has systematically brought the palace's grandeur back to life. The Sala di Marte, Sala di Astrea, and Sala di Trono have regained their majestic character, while the grand staircase once again provides visitors with the awe-inspiring entrance its architects intended. In the gardens, dead trees have been replaced, seasonal flower beds reinstated, and work has begun on restoring the historic Carolino Aqueduct to return water to the palace's spectacular fountains and cascades. Hollywood's discovery of the palace has added another dimension to its revival. The restored complex has served as a backdrop for numerous high-profile productions, with its majestic interiors standing in for the Theed City Naboo Palace in Star Wars Episode II, The Phantom Menace, and Episode II, Attack of the Clones. Productions like Mission Impossible 3 and Angels and Demons have similarly showcased the palace's restored splendor to global audiences. Today, Casserta pulses with cultural energy. Tourist numbers have soared, with a single month in 2021 bringing nearly 80,000 visitors through its gates. The palace hosts contemporary art exhibitions in its royal apartments, while the annual Un'estate de Re Summer Music Festival fills its historic courtyards with performances by world-renowned artists like Roberto Bolle, Zucchero, and Placido Domingo. The complex has earned a prestigious third star in the Michelin Green Guide to southern Italy, placing it on equal footing with Pompeii. As restoration work continues, the Palace of Caserta stands as an icon of the enduring value of architectural heritage. The complex that Charles VII commissioned to rival Europe's greatest palaces has found new purpose as a celebration of art, culture, and human achievement. In saving this magnificent structure, Italy has preserved not just a building, but a bridge between past and present, where the grandest dreams of the 18th century continue to inspire visitors from around the world. Today, 3 million pieces of human genius rest within seafoam green walls stretching longer than 2 football fields. Rembrandt masterpieces catch the light streaming through 2,000 windows. A mechanical golden peacock still marks time in perfect silence, just as it has for centuries. This is the Winter Palace of St. Petersburg, where precious stones line entire rooms, where the world's oldest carpet tells tales of ancient kings, and where even the doorknobs once required white gloves to polish. But on a bitter December night in 1837, this treasure house of civilization was transformed into an inferno that lit up the Russian sky. As temperatures plunged to -30 degrees, firefighters watched helplessly as their water turned to sheets of ice before it could reach the flames. Inside, priceless artwork melted, floors collapsed, and 3 centuries of imperial splendor seemed destined to vanish into ash. What happened next would defy everything we think we know about human capability. In today's episode, we share not just the story of a palace that burned. We tell the tale of how an emperor's impossible demand launched one of the most ambitious architectural restorations ever attempted, as we describe why Europe's most opulent palace almost burned to the ground. In 1754, amid the frozen grandeur of St. Petersburg, Empress Elizabeth of Russia began construction on a palace that would come to symbolize Russian imperial might for centuries. The Italian architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli was commissioned to create a Baroque masterpiece that would establish St. Petersburg as one of Europe's most impressive capitals. The result would be the Winter Palace, whose distinctive green and white facade would stretch 215 meters along the Neva River. The Winter Palace had already seen several iterations before reaching its iconic form. Peter the Great had established the first winter residence on this site in 1708, but subsequent rulers had gradually expanded and transformed it. Rastrelli's design would dwarf all previous versions, creating a structure of unprecedented scale and grandeur that perfectly embodied the growing power of Imperial Russia. The statistics of the new palace spoke to its immensity. More than 1,000 rooms, 117 staircases, and nearly 2,000 windows, letting in precious light during St. Petersburg's dark winters. The exterior was a masterwork of Baroque architecture, with its rhythmic facade combining Russian and European artistic traditions in a display of architectural virtuosity that announced Russia's arrival as a European power. As construction neared completion in 1762, Catherine the Great ascended to the throne, marking the beginning of a new era for the palace. Though she removed Rastrelli from the project, Catherine would transform the Winter Palace and its surrounding complex into one of the world's greatest centers of art and culture. Under her direction, it evolved beyond a mere royal residence to become a legendary repository of artistic treasures. The interiors reflected the pinnacle of 18th century craftsmanship and luxury. The state gala staircase served as the ceremonial entrance, its magnificent decorations setting the tone for the splendor that awaited within. The staterooms dazzled visitors with their opulent decoration, while the private apartments provided comfort for the imperial family and their closest courtiers. Military glory and artistic refinement intertwined within these walls. The War Gallery of 1812 would later display 332 portraits of generals who fought against Napoleon, while the palace complex expanded to include 3 adjoining buildings collectively known as the Hermitage. housing Catherine's growing art collection that would form the nucleus of one of the world's most prestigious museums. The palace complex functioned as a city unto itself, housing not only the imperial family, but also hundreds of servants, officials, and guards. Every corner of the vast structure served a purpose, from the grand state rooms where empires were governed to the countless service areas that kept the massive household running smoothly. By the early 19th century, the Winter Palace stood as the very heart of the Russian Empire. Every significant moment in the life of the imperial family and the state was marked within its walls. Grand balls, diplomatic receptions, royal weddings, and state funerals all unfolded in its magnificent halls. Yet this symbol of imperial power would face an unprecedented challenge in the winter of 1837, when a catastrophic fire threatened to erase decades of architectural and artistic achievement. On the 17th of December, 1837, as winter's grip held St. Petersburg, smoke began pouring from the Winter Palace. The fire, which began in the Field Marshal Hall, would develop into one of the most catastrophic palace fires in European history. The blaze, later traced to defective chimney flues near wooden partitions, found ready fuel in the building's extensive wooden interiors, the framework that supported its magnificent facades and grand halls. Emperor Nicholas I had been attending a performance at the Mikhailovsky Theatre when word of the fire reached him. Upon arrival at the palace, he immediately took command of the emergency response, demonstrating the hands-on leadership style for which he was known. The emperor moved through the increasingly dangerous areas of the palace, directing both the firefighting effort and the desperate race to save the building's priceless contents. The bitter winter conditions complicated the rescue efforts enormously. The freezing temperatures turned the firefighters' water into sheets of ice almost instantly upon contact with the building. What began as an attempt to quench the flames inadvertently created hazardous conditions, as water froze on stairs and balconies, turning evacuation routes into treacherous paths. The soldiers of the Preobrazhensky Guards Regiment emerged as the heroes of the night. Working with remarkable efficiency, they methodically evacuated precious artifacts, furniture, and imperial treasures from the burning palace. The portraits from the military gallery of 1812, celebrating the generals who had fought against Napoleon, were among the countless treasures saved from the advancing flames, while the palace's magnificent fixtures and furnishings were rushed to safety. As the night wore on, the fire reached its terrifying apex. The inferno created its own terrible spectacle, drawing thousands of St. Petersburg's citizens to Palace Square despite the bitter cold. Flames shot skyward from the palace roof, casting an apocalyptic glow over the city centre that could be seen from miles away. The intense heat shattered windows across the square and melted snow on neighbouring buildings. Inside, floors collapsed as fire consumed the wooden structural elements, sending burning debris cascading through the palace's interior. In a remarkable display of civic unity, local citizens joined the soldiers in their rescue efforts. The nearby Hermitage buildings became impromptu warehouses for evacuated artifacts, while the palace's vaulted stone cellars protected what couldn't be moved. Through these combined efforts, an astounding portion of the palace's movable heritage survived, even as the building itself suffered devastating damage. By daybreak on December 18th, the fire had gutted much of the palace interior. The once resplendent staterooms stood as hollow shells, their ornate decorations reduced to ashes or warped beyond recognition. Multiple sections of the roof had caved in, and many of the palace's structural elements had been severely compromised by the intense heat and flames. Yet even as smoke still rose from the ruins, Emperor Nicholas I made a declaration that would define both his reign and the palace's future. Standing amid the devastation, he announced that the Winter Palace would be fully restored to its former glory within 15 months. This bold proclamation would launch one of the most ambitious architectural restoration projects ever attempted, testing the limits of human ingenuity, engineering capability, and sheer determination in a race against time. Emperor Nicholas I's declaration that the Winter Palace must be restored within 1 year set in motion one of the most remarkable construction projects of the 19th century. In the wake of the devastating fire, work began immediately to restore the imperial residence to its former glory. The project's scale was unprecedented. An entire palace had to be rebuilt while preserving its historic character and architectural integrity. The restoration effort commenced even as the ruins still smoldered. Workers began clearing debris and assessing the extent of the damage, while architects and engineers developed plans for the massive undertaking ahead. The winter weather posed significant challenges, but the urgency of the emperor's deadline meant work had to proceed despite the harsh conditions. Under the supervision of architects Vasily Stasov and Alexander Bruilov, the restoration project took shape. These talented architects brought their considerable expertise to bear on the immense challenge of rebuilding the palace while maintaining its historic character. Their combined knowledge of the palace's original design and construction proved invaluable in guiding the restoration process. The rebuilding of the Winter Palace became a matter of national importance. The project drew upon the vast resources of the Russian Empire, mobilizing materials and expertise on an unprecedented scale. The restoration required not only rebuilding the basic structure, but also recreating the intricate decorative elements that had made the Winter Palace one of Europe's most impressive royal residences. Throughout 1838, work on the palace proceeded at an intense pace. The project demanded extraordinary coordination and planning to manage the various aspects of reconstruction simultaneously. From structural repairs to decorative finishing, every element of the restoration required careful attention to detail and precise execution to meet the emperor's demanding timeline. The restoration effort focused not only on rebuilding the palace's structure, but also on recreating its lavish interiors. The staterooms, which had been the setting for countless imperial ceremonies and events, needed to be restored to their former magnificence. This involved the painstaking work of recreating decorative elements and finishes that had been destroyed in the fire. As the work progressed, the palace gradually began to reclaim its former splendor. Room by room, the restoration revealed the grandeur that had made the Winter Palace the center of imperial Russian life. The project demonstrated the empire's ability to marshal its resources and expertise for a task of enormous complexity and scale. By spring 1839, slightly more than a year after the fire, the Winter Palace stood restored. Though the project had extended somewhat beyond Nicholas III's original 1-year deadline, the achievement was nonetheless remarkable. The restored palace served as a monument of Russian determination and skill, preserving one of the empire's most significant monuments for future generations. The Winter Palace would continue its role as both the official residence of the Russian emperors and a symbol of imperial power and cultural achievement. Following its restoration in 1839, the Winter Palace continued its role as both the official residence of the Russian imperial family and the grandest expression of Russian state power. The palace complex had already begun its transformation into a public cultural institution when, in 1852, the first public museum opened in the adjoining Hermitage buildings. This marked the beginning of a gradual evolution from private imperial collection to public institution. The Winter Palace witnessed another pivotal moment in Russian history on the 7th of November, 1917, October 25th, in the old Julian calendar, during the Bolshevik Revolution. The palace, which then housed the provisional government that had ruled Russia since the February Revolution, fell to the Bolsheviks without the dramatic storming often depicted in revolutionary mythology. Instead, a small group of Red Guards entered the palace and arrested the ministers of the provisional government, marking the end of the imperial era that had defined the building for so long. In the years following the revolution, the palace complex underwent a gradual transformation. The Hermitage, already established as a state museum, began to expand its presence within the Winter Palace itself. The process of converting imperial spaces into public galleries proceeded steadily as the Soviet government worked to transform this symbol of monarchy into an institution of public education and cultural heritage. The staterooms that had once hosted imperial ceremonies found new purpose as galleries, their elaborate decorations now providing a historical context for the display of art. The integration of the Winter Palace into the museum complex represented a significant shift in Russian cultural life, as spaces once reserved for the elite became accessible to the general public. During World War II, as German forces threatened Leningrad, the palace and its collections faced a new crisis. Museum staff began evacuating the Hermitage's treasures even before the siege began, sending items not only to the Urals but to various secure locations. Yet even during the devastating 872-day siege of Leningrad, the palace remained a center of cultural life. Its massive cellars served as bomb shelters, while the building housed both people and cultural activities throughout the ordeal, maintaining a flame of civilization in the besieged city. The post-war decades brought both restoration and change to the Winter Palace. While efforts were made to preserve the palace's historic character, the Soviet period saw varying approaches to the building's conservation and use. Some areas received careful restoration, while others experienced periods of neglect or adaptation to different purposes, reflecting the complex relationship between Soviet ideology and imperial heritage. Today's Winter Palace stands as a symbol of centuries of Russian history and culture, as it forms the core of the State Hermitage Museum, one of the world's largest and most renowned cultural institutions. The museum complex, which includes several adjacent buildings, houses an astounding collection of over 3 million items spanning the breadth of human cultural achievement. Within its walls, visitors discover prehistoric treasures such as the world's oldest surviving knotted pile carpet from the Pazyryk culture, alongside classical antiquities featuring Greek, Roman, and Hellenistic sculptures and artifacts. The palace's galleries showcase an extensive collection of Western European art, including masterpieces by Leonardo da Vinci, Rembrandt, and Picasso. Among its most remarkable treasures is the Golden Peacock Clock by James Cox, a marvel of 18th century craftsmanship. The museum also holds a significant collection of Dutch Golden Age and Flemish Baroque paintings, representing one of the finest such collections in existence. Additionally, visitors today can explore magnificent spaces such as the Jordan Staircase, St. George's Hall, and the Malachite Room, each chamber telling its own story of Russia's imperial past. As millions cross its threshold each year, they walk the same halls where Russian history pivoted from monarchy to museum, and where treasures once reserved for emperors now belong to everyone. In millions of childhood memories around the world, the silhouette of Disney's Cinderella Castle not only stands tall but practically curtsies with a flourish, welcoming legions of wide-eyed dreamers to a realm where fairy tales leap off the pages. This beloved cultural icon, however, isn't just a figment of pure fantasy. It's a creative homage to a very real German castle with a backstory as compelling as any Disney script, minus the talking mice and magical pumpkins. Indeed, Neuschwanstein Castle has danced through a remarkable saga of rebirth, from silently crumbling on the edge of decay to a breathtaking resurgence that sparkles the imagination and lightens the spirit. In this episode of Old Money Mansions, we'll bring you into the fascinating twists and turns of this real-life Cinderella Castle's revival, and unveil an architectural narrative replete with the kind of drama and surprise worthy of a Disney classic ending. Therefore, join us today as we describe how the real-life Cinderella Castle was preserved for posterity by a mind-bending and world-changing restoration. In the waning years of the 19th century, a certain Bavarian monarch, King Ludwig II, found himself licking the wounds of defeat at the hands of Prussia. But rather than sulk, he channeled his energies into an enterprise of epic proportions, the erection of Neuschwanstein Castle. And this wasn't just any old pile of bricks. Oh no, it was to be a domicile fit for a king, quite literally, with a nod to his hero, none other than Richard Wagner. Think of it as a fan's ultimate tribute, a stone and mortar fan letter to the composer's melodramatic operas, with the majestic alpine scenery of Ludwig's childhood stomping grounds, Hohenschwangau, as a backdrop. Neuschwanstein was to outshine any medieval fortress that ever existed, both a dwelling and a three-dimensional homage to the valiant knights and epic tales that Wagner so melodically immortalized. The groundbreaking, or rather castle-raising event on the 5th of September 1869 kicked off what was basically a construction marathon. Workers took to the formidable task, defying the craggy landscape with state-of-the-art building tactics and perhaps an utter disregard for budget constraints. The treasury's coffers would quiver and quake as the tab doubled to a sum that would have modern accountants fainting, close to a cool 200 million euros in today's cash. And now here's the kicker. Ludwig II, the royal visionary behind this grandiose scheme, got to enjoy his dream castle only in his daydreams, having passed away even before the last battlement was in place. Thus, as for the decor, the interior finishing touches, which mirrored Ludwig's unslaked desire for his own fairy tale realm, were a posthumous affair. This architectural wonder, born out of military defeat, morphed into a rather grand monument to what could have been for the ill-fated king. After Ludwig's death, his intended solitary hideaway became an ironic magnet for the masses, even in the early 1900s before airplane travel and the global tourism industry. Little did those early visitors know, this architectural marvel would soon spark a flame in the imagination of Walt Disney, a man known for crafting realms of fantasy and wonder, setting the stage for it to become the quintessence of fairy tale dreams in the hearts of children across the globe. Perched like an imperial crown atop the lush tapestries of Bavaria's alpine foothills, Neuschwanstein Castle might easily be mistaken for a backdrop in a high-definition fantasy video game, rather than a 19th century homage to medieval grandeur. Indeed, imagine a castle so steeped in whimsy that it would become the blueprint for the House of Mouse's most enchanting palaces. Neuschwanstein, with its towers reaching skyward like the outstretched hands of a magician, was never meant for defense. Instead, it was an architect's gamble across the drawing board, leaping over practicality to land squarely in the realm of the fantastic. Within these walls, bedecked with the images of royalty, chivalrous knights and star-crossed lovers, King Ludwig II brought to life a medieval tapestry in stone and mortar. However, unlike the sturdy, symmetric fortresses of the medieval past, Neuschwanstein's design is an exuberant defiance of geometry, with an asymmetry that suggests a fairy tale penned by Mother Nature herself. And it's this spirited eccentricity that caught the eye of a young Walt Disney, a man whose own empire was built on the foundations of youthful imagination. In fact, it's said that the turrets of Disney's Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty castles owe their spiraling grace to Ludwig's alpine fantasy. Yet while the Bavarian masterpiece is firmly rooted in Romanesque sensibilities, think robust towers and rounded arches, Disney's versions flirt with Gothic influences and sport a slender, more skyward-bound aesthetic. Now, Neuschwanstein itself is a pastiche of styles, its Romanesque heart wrapped in Byzantine elegance and romantic flair. A fortress of fancy, it boasts an elongation of structures that dance along the cliff's edge, a celebration of form over function, with its decorative turrets and picturesque pinnacles. While its windows, arrayed in pairs and trios, bring forth images of ancient cloisters, they also wink at the viewer, as if in the know of their own theatricality. It's almost as if there was a silent pact between the king's vision and Disney's dream, a shared secret that to this day continues to spin tales of enchantment, where for a moment the fantastical seems utterly tangible. However, as the decades of the 20th century rolled along, Europe would soon brace for the upheaval of World War II, with the once invulnerable Neuschwanstein Castle facing an uncertain future. Its storied halls, a refuge for royal whimsy, were on the verge of becoming silent witnesses to the ravages of time and war. During the horrifying conflagrations of World War II, the grand Neuschwanstein Castle found itself a reluctant repository for Europe's ravaged riches. It's hard to believe that the walls which once reverberated with the footsteps of the Bavarian monarchy had been repurposed as the Nazis' own version of a treasure trove, hiding masterpieces amid its Gothic spires. Indeed, the fairy tale fortress was a repository for pilfered art, a backdrop for the Hitler Youth's March, and then a post-war pit stop for GI soldiers needing a bed for the night. It's said that amidst the grandeur, soldiers stumbled upon a trove of photo albums, a who's who of looted finery. These eventually played a part in restoring stolen goods to their rightful places, like returning misplaced children to their homes. And the 1980s proved that even castles aren't immune to the march of time, as Neuschwanstein's underpinnings hinted at an unwelcome truth. Gravity is no respecter of palaces. The foundation showed signs of distress, and the interior too, perhaps miffed at the unending parade of post-war tourists, began showing its age. We can only imagine the walls whispering for a break as day trippers shuffled through, and the relentless flash of cameras fading fabrics and tarnishing timber. Yet in this story, our castle is the protagonist that never truly saw its own grand finale. King Ludwig II's dream remained incomplete, with visitors touring the mere 14 rooms finished before his untimely demise. As the 90s rolled in, the architectural tune changed to one of urgency. Renovations were in the cards for our architectural celebrity, struggling under the weight of over 70 million visits. The signs of a well-loved landmark were there, a throne room crack that would make any monarch blanch, and brocades begging for a bath. By the cusp of a new millennium, UNESCO threw its hat in the ring, eyeballing Neuschwanstein with a mixture of concern and awe. Indeed, their criteria for outstanding universal value could have been penned with the castle in mind. Thus, with UNESCO's attention entering the fray, the castle's fabled spires and turrets, once on the brink of becoming relics of a bygone age, were poised on the edge of rebirth. In the cozy Bavarian village of Schwangau, high on a hill, the venerable Neuschwanstein Castle found itself in the spotlight of a meticulous makeover, kicking off in 2012. And the historians and preservation enthusiasts involved in the process definitely had their work cut out for them. Assessing the condition of modern materials, masquerading in medieval garb, upped the ante in the restoration game. The stately dwelling's precarious perch above Schwangau brought additional logistical larks, as one doesn't simply pop over to a fairy tale castle's turret with a hammer and nails. With a €20 million budget unfurled like a royal decree, 2013 marked the commencement of the grand refurbishment, the largest in its storied existence. This operation unfolded in carefully choreographed stages to keep the cash register ringing from tourism, ensuring that culture vultures could still traipse through its halls without missing a beat. The Act 1 of this drama saw the gateway building's facade and top hat getting a touch-up, with a scheduled curtain call by the autumn of 2017. Then, the spotlight swung to the retaining wall along Neuschwansteinstrasse, laying the groundwork for the next scene. But as with any good story, a twist. Neuschwanstein was still a magnet for castle crashers, pulling in a cool $1.5 million a year. This cavalcade of culture seekers, alongside Father Time's relentless march, left the castle's insides a tad worse for wear. The troupe behind the scenes juggled keeping the drawbridge down for visitors and the necessary preservation waltz with admirable finesse. By 2016, Mother Nature flexed her muscles, tossing in weather woes to the mix and thing the plot for the restoration team. And a few years later, cutting-edge 3D scanning waltzed right alongside, turning every nook and cranny into digital blueprints, aiding in the castle's spruce-up with laser precision. As the decade drew to a close, 2019 saw Neuschwanstein become the darling of public debate, as critics and aficionados clashed swords over the soul of restoration. The bone of contention, should it shine anew or wear its age with pride? Indeed, this beloved bastion wasn't destined to be a pristine Disney set piece, but a storied sanctuary where each stone tells a tale and perhaps preserves the patina of time for the future to admire. As we rolled into 2020 with all the subtlety of a New Year's Eve firework display, Neuschwanstein Castle was putting on the final touches, not of makeup, mind you, but a restoration of the most painstaking kind. And this wasn't just another paint job. Imagine 70 million footsteps, from globetrotters to the curious, pacing through since 1886, each leaving their microscopic mark on history. This restoration was like lovingly ironing your grandparents' face. It's about cherishing the stories told by every line and crease, not trying to make them disappear. Stefan Wolf, master of the fine brush and connoisseur of the ecclesiastical palette, was the ringleader of this artful balancing act. He wasn't beautifying, He was preserving, kind of like a museum curator for plaster, stone and steel. Come 2021, the grand tada moment was at hand. Neuschwanstein swung open its regal doors, welcoming admirers into its embrace once more. Visitors could now embark on a guided odyssey through history and architecture, a journey that was not just about seeing, but about experiencing the grandeur. The plot thickened in 2022 when the Marienbrücke, a photographer's dream bridge, was once again ready for its close-up, having had its own nip and tuck. The castle's reopening was more than a fresh coat of paint. It was a jump-start for the local wallet, with the magnetism of the castle drawing eyes and euros alike. In addition, in keeping with the times, Neuschwanstein Castle had gone green. No, not with envy, but with energy. Sustainability was now king of the castle. While solar panels gave the historic vibes a miss, wind turbines became the accessory du jour on nearby fields, and local rooftops flirted with the sun. As for tourism, that double-edged sword of income and wear, the castle's custodians juggled visitor numbers and climate challenges with the deftness of a circus performer. Buses with low floors, lifts for tired legs, and spaced-out visiting hours meant everyone could enjoy the spectacle without elbowing their neighbor. Now, as we continue through the 2020s, Neuschwanstein's silhouette still casts a long shadow over the world of art and architecture. And while it has become a muse for the House of Mouse, it stands as a paragon of how culture can shake hands with eco-consciousness. This is no mere relic, it's a beacon of how tradition can dance with innovation. Therefore, the narrative of Neuschwanstein isn't finished. It's still being written, with each visitor adding a word, each green initiative a sentence, and every little repair a chapter in this ongoing story of preservation and renewal. Picture a palace so magnificent it needs 11 different types of towers just to show off properly. Then imagine it abandoned to time and neglect. Indeed, the Chateau De Chambord doesn't just dominate the Loire Valley. It serves as a magnificent warning about how easily we can lose our greatest treasures. With 440 rooms that once hosted kings but later stood empty, 282 fireplaces that grew cold with time, and a Leonardo da Vinci-designed staircase that witnessed centuries of silence, this architectural masterpiece nearly became France's greatest regret. Thus, in today's episode, we share with you the tale of how one of Europe's most ambitious architectural dreams nearly became a vanished relic, as we describe how France almost lost its most magnificent chateau. To approach Chateau de Chambord today is to experience architecture as theatre. Rising from the Loire Valley like a vision from a Renaissance dream, the chateau's massive central keep commands immediate attention, its 4 immense bastion towers anchoring the corners of what would become one of history's most ambitious architectural endeavours. Above, an intricate roofscape creates a mesmerising silhouette against the sky. A skyline often compared to that of a medieval town, with 11 distinct types of towers and 3 varieties of chimneys competing for attention in a stunning display of architectural exuberance. Step inside, and you find yourself in one of 4 vaulted hallways that form a perfect cross on each floor. At the heart of this geometric precision lies Chambord's most celebrated feature, a spectacular double-spiral staircase attributed to Leonardo da Vinci's influence. This architectural marvel allows 2 people to ascend or descend simultaneously without ever meeting, their parallel journeys illuminated from above by a lighthouse-like tower at the chateau's highest point. The sheer scale of Chambord becomes apparent as you explore its 440 rooms, encountering 282 fireplaces and 84 staircases along the way. Each space, from the royal apartments once occupied by Francis I and Louis XIV to the grandest halls, showcases the pinnacle of Renaissance craftsmanship. Even empty rooms command attention through their architectural details and precise stonework. Ascending to the roof terrace rewards visitors with breathtaking views of the surrounding landscape and an intimate look at the intricate masonry that creates Chambord's distinctive profile. From this vantage point, the recently restored French formal gardens spread out below, covering 6.5 hectares and providing a seamless transition between architecture and nature. These gardens, completed in 2017, feature over 600 trees, 800 shrubs, 200 roses, and more than 15,000 border plants, all arranged in geometric patterns that echo the mathematical precision of the chateau itself. Beyond the formal gardens lies a vast 52.5 square kilometre wooded park, enclosed by a 31-kilometre wall. This sprawling game reserve, home to red deer and diverse wildlife, offers visitors a newly created 4-kilometre canal tour. Observatories and educational supports along the route provide insight into this remarkable biological reserve, completing the experience of one of France's most ambitious architectural achievements. Yet Chambord's current grandeur masks a tumultuous history. This magnificent structure, which today stands as a testament to Renaissance ambition and architectural genius, has weathered centuries of neglect, revolution, war, and near destruction. Behind its perfectly restored facade lies a story of royal dreams, artistic innovation, revolutionary fury, and unlikely salvation. A tale that begins with a young king's ambitious vision to create not just a hunting lodge, but a statement of power that would reshape the architectural landscape of France forever. In September 1519, the marshy wilderness of France's Sologne region witnessed the beginning of an architectural revolution. Fresh from his military campaigns in Italy and intoxicated by the artistic innovations of the Italian Renaissance, King Francis I embarked on a project that would transform a humble hunting lodge into one of history's most remarkable palaces. The young monarch's vision, influenced by his deep appreciation for Italian artistry, would reshape French architecture forever. From the outset, the project's ambitions were staggering. Italian architect Domenico da Cortona's initial design centered around a medieval-inspired keep with 4 massive round towers. However, this was merely the beginning. The influence of Leonardo da Vinci, spending his final years at the nearby Chateau de Clos-Lucé, permeated the project through his interactions with the king and court architects. Though da Vinci would not live to see construction begin, his genius found immortality in Chambord's celebrated double helix staircase. The construction itself posed immense challenges. Up to 1,800 workers labored at the site during its peak in 1526, battling the marshy terrain that required extensive foundation work before the walls could even begin to rise. Progress suffered further setbacks during the Italian War of 1521 to 1526, as royal funds and attention were diverted to military campaigns. Francis I's ambitions for Chambord grew even grander following his return from captivity in Madrid. Around 1526, he ordered the addition of 2 wings to the central keep, one to house his personal apartments and another for a royal chapel. This expansion transformed the project from a hunting lodge into a true palace, its footprint stretching to an impressive 156 meters in length. The chateau's architecture broke new ground in French civil design. Its symmetrical layout, organized around a Greek cross plan, revolutionized French architectural thinking. The elaborate roofline, adorned with over 800 sculpted columns, created a skyline that Francis reportedly wanted to rival that of Constantinople. This harmonious blend of medieval French tradition and Italian Renaissance innovation would influence French architecture for centuries to come. Yet for all his grand ambitions, Francis I would spend only 72 days at Chambord throughout his reign. The chateau served primarily as a stage for grand hunting parties and diplomatic showmanship, most notably in 1539 when Francis entertained his rival, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, demonstrating French cultural refinement and royal power through architectural splendor. When Francis died in 1547, Chambord remained unfinished, its fate suddenly uncertain. His son and successor, Henry II, showed little interest in the project, marking the beginning of a long period of neglect. The magnificent palace, born from one king's Renaissance dreams, would soon face decades of abandonment, its halls echoing with emptiness rather than the courtly life for which they were designed. Yet this was only the beginning of Chambord's dramatic story, as the chateau would eventually face challenges its creators could never have imagined. After decades of neglect following Francis I's death, Chateau de Chambord experienced a brief revival when King Louis XIII gifted the chateau to his brother Gaston, Duke of Orléans, in 1639. Gaston, recognizing the chateau's deteriorating state, initiated significant restoration efforts to save it from further decay. These renovations marked the first substantial improvements to Chambord since its initial construction. Louis XIV, the Sun King, continued the restoration work begun by his uncle, bringing his characteristic opulence to the refurbishment of the royal apartments. In a grand gesture that transformed Chambord into an impressive hunting lodge, Louis XIV constructed massive new stables capable of housing 1,200 horses. The additions allowed the king and his court to host elaborate hunting parties and entertainment, briefly returning life to the chateau's silent halls. Despite these improvements, Louis XIV's interest in Chambord proved fleeting, and by 1685 the Sun King had abandoned the chateau in favor of other royal residences, particularly Versailles. This abandonment left Chambord vulnerable to the tumultuous events that would soon unfold across France. The French Revolution of 1789 brought devastating changes to the chateau, culminating in 1792 when revolutionary authorities ordered the sale of its furnishings. The once opulent interiors were systematically stripped bare, with even the wall paneling, prized for its craftsmanship and materials, removed and sold to the highest bidder. The wooden floors, which had once supported the footsteps of kings, were torn up and sold for their timber value. In perhaps the most poignant symbol of the chateau's fall from grace, ornately carved doors that had once marked the boundaries of royal spaces were burned simply to provide warmth during the sale of the chateau's contents. The magnificent hunting lodge of kings now stood empty, its 440 rooms echoing with absence rather than life. 282 fireplaces went cold, and 84 staircases led only to abandoned chambers. Left vulnerable to the elements and decay, Chambord faced an uncertain future as the 18th century drew to a close. The once proud symbol of royal power had become a hollow shell of its former self, its stripped rooms and empty halls standing as a testament to the revolutionary fury that had swept through France. American poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, visiting in the 1830s, captured the chateau's melancholic state. All is mournful and deserted. The grass has overgrown the pavement of the courtyard, and the rude sculpture upon the walls is broken and defaced. Yet even in this state of decline, Chambord's fundamental grandeur remained, waiting for the next chapter in its remarkable story to unfold. As the 19th century progressed, new challenges and unexpected opportunities would arise, testing the resilience of this architectural masterpiece in ways its original builders could never have anticipated. The outbreak of World War II thrust an unexpected new role upon Chateau de Chambord. In August 1939, as war loomed on the horizon, Jacques Jaujard, the director of French National Museums, initiated a secret plan to evacuate the Louvre's priceless collections. Chambord's remote location and vast size made it the perfect choice as the primary repository for France's artistic treasures. On August 28, 1939, just days before France declared war on Germany, the Mona Lisa departed the Louvre, carefully packed in a custom-made poplar case lined with red velvet. Over the next several days, a convoy of 203 vehicles transported 1,862 wooden crates containing more than 3,600 paintings and thousands of other artifacts to Chambord. The chateau quickly became the largest of 83 repositories safeguarding France's cultural patrimony. By June 1944, Chambord housed an astonishing 4,000 cubic meters of crates filled with masterpieces. Among these treasures were iconic works such as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, Delacroix's Liberty Leading the People, and the Lady and the Unicorn tapestries. Throughout the war, the artworks were clandestinely moved between various chateaux to evade Nazi detection. The Mona Lisa alone was relocated 5 times, including stays at the Abbey of Loc-Dieu and the Ingres Museum in Montauban. A dedicated team of art conservators and guards was brought to the estate to protect the priceless collection. These protectors went to extraordinary lengths to ensure the collection's safety, even writing Musée du Louvre in massive letters in the surrounding fields to deter Allied bombers. On June 22, 1944, the chateau faced a heart-stopping moment when an American B-24 Liberator bomber crashed onto its lawn. Miraculously, none of the artwork sustained any damage in the incident. As the war drew to a close, the Mona Lisa finally returned to the Louvre on June 16, 1945. The departure of these artistic treasures marked the end of a brief but crucial chapter in Chambord's history. After the war, the chateau entered another period of relative neglect, its empty halls no longer guarding the nation's artistic heritage. However, this wartime role had highlighted Chambord's importance as a cultural landmark in ways its original builders could never have imagined. In 1947, comprehensive restoration work began in earnest, marking the beginning of yet another transformation in the chateau's remarkable history. The massive structure that had protected France's artistic soul during humanity's darkest hour would soon face its own renaissance, as new challenges and opportunities emerged in the post-war world. The turn of the millennium marked the beginning of Chambord's most ambitious restoration since its original construction. In 2000, the chateau launched a monumental project to restore its formal gardens to their 18th century splendor, an undertaking that would become one of France's most significant garden restorations in more than 2 decades. Completed in 2017, the garden restoration transformed 6.5 hectares of grounds into a masterpiece of French landscape design. Meticulous research drew upon historical documents, engravings, and archaeological evidence to recreate the intricate patterns that once graced the chateau's surroundings during Louis XIV's reign. The restored gardens now showcase 600 trees, 800 shrubs, 200 roses, and more than 15,000 border plants, their geometric designs reflecting the mathematical precision of the chateau itself. Yet Chambord's renaissance extends beyond mere restoration. In 2017, the chateau embraced the future by installing a groundbreaking geothermal heating system. 18 boreholes, each 200 meters deep, now tap into the Earth's natural heat, providing sustainable warmth to the vast structure. This innovative solution demonstrates how a 500-year-old monument can adapt to modern environmental challenges without compromising its historical integrity. The chateau's commitment to sustainability reaches even further, with the development of organic vegetable gardens and vineyards following permaculture principles. These initiatives create a self-sustaining ecosystem that connects visitors to the estate's agricultural heritage while reducing its environmental impact. Recent restoration work continues to address the challenges of maintaining such an enormous and complex structure. In June 2023, workers completed the delicate restoration of the chateau's 6 roof lanterns, reintegrating decorative elements that had been removed in the mid-20th century. Meanwhile, the ongoing restoration of the 32-kilometer enclosure wall serves as a training ground for young heritage restoration professionals, combining conservation with social responsibility. Looking toward the future, Chambord's management has developed Chambord 2030 Renaissance and Revolutions, a comprehensive plan addressing cultural development, restoration, ecological transition, and economic sustainability. This forward-thinking strategy ensures that the chateau will continue to captivate visitors while serving as a model for sustainable heritage management in the 21st century. Today, Francis I's dream has evolved far beyond its original concept as a hunting lodge or even a statement of royal power. Chambord stands as a living monument to the possibility of harmoniously blending past and future. Its massive silhouette still dominates the Loire Valley landscape, but now its significance extends beyond architectural splendor. The chateau demonstrates how historical monuments can adapt to modern challenges while preserving their essential character, proving that, even after 5 centuries, innovation and tradition can coexist within the same magnificent walls. 500 years after its first stone was laid, Chambord continues to surprise and inspire. The hunting lodge that became a palace, then a sanctuary for art, and now a model of sustainable preservation, proves that true Renaissance is not a single moment in history, but a continuing process of renewal and reinvention. In this latest chapter of its extraordinary story, Chambord once again leads the way forward, showing how the grandest dreams of the past can help shape a sustainable future. At the crossroads of power and posterity, the Habsburgs forged monuments that redefined human achievement. Indeed, their palaces rose from European soil as expressions of absolute authority, where architectural perfection met imperial might in a dance of stone and grandeur. Here, in chambers where candlelight once flickered across priceless artworks, Europe's most powerful dynasty orchestrated the fate of nations. Thus, in today's episode, we'll take you through every gilded corridor that holds secrets of succession and scandal, showing how the Habsburg family transformed their vision of authority into architectural masterpieces that still command awe after centuries. First on our list of legendary palaces of the Habsburg family is Schönbrunn Palace, a place that has often been compared to Versailles, and its scale, history, and artistic details reflect the cultural prominence of the Habsburg rulers. Situated in Vienna's 13th district, it was once the summer retreat for the Imperial family. Construction began in 1696 under Emperor Leopold I, and Johann Bernhard Fischer von Erlach's original design set the stage for a Baroque masterpiece. Later, during Empress Maria Theresa's reign, renovations and expansions shaped the complex into what visitors experience today. These efforts, credited to Fischer von Erlach and Nicolaus Percassi, generated a building that blends opulent interiors with meticulous landscaping. A defining characteristic is its 1,441 rooms, only 40 of which are open to the public. They illustrate the grandeur of both Baroque and Rococo styles, as seen in areas like the Great Gallery, historically used for large receptions. The Millions Room, featuring rare rosewood and Mughal miniatures, and the Vieux-Lac Room, with sumptuous red and gold decor, emphasize the luxurious tastes of the imperial family. Another highlight is the Mirror Room, famous for hosting a 6-year-old Mozart's first public performance. Beyond the palace walls, visitors can explore gardens spanning 176 hectares, or 435 acres, laid out in the formal Baroque tradition. The Great Parterre, the largest open section, includes manicured flower beds and geometric patterns that form a striking visual corridor leading to the Neptune Fountain. This fountain's sculptural elements exemplify Baroque artistry. At the top of a gentle rise stands the Gloriette, a grand pavilion offering sweeping views of Vienna. Farther within the grounds is Tiergarten Schönbrunn, established in 1752 and recognized as the oldest zoo in operation. Emperors and empresses frequented this zoological garden, which remains a center for conservation and education. Schönbrunn's historical significance includes its role as the birthplace of Emperor Franz Joseph I in 1830. It was also central in the early life of Marie Antoinette, who grew up here before moving to the French court. Following the collapse of the monarchy in 1918, this palace opened to the public as a museum. Today, its brightly hued exterior, famously called Schönbrunn Yellow or Habsburg Yellow, distinguishes it from many other European palaces. This distinctive paint scheme, applied in the 19th century, replaced sections of the original Rococo facade and became a color strongly associated with imperial authority. In addition to its museum function, Schönbrunn hosts cultural events and concerts. Visitors are free to walk through selected rooms and meander through the extensive gardens, tracing the same paths once reserved for royalty. This palace remains a major landmark for Vienna, drawing millions of guests each year. Its layered architectural history, lavish decorations, and celebrated gardens highlight the Habsburg influence on Europe's artistic and political landscapes. Schönbrunns' enduring allure captures a period when royal patronage and Baroque design flourished, connecting present-day admirers to centuries of imperial tradition. Number 2. Hofburg Palace, Vienna. For more than 6 centuries, the Hofburg Palace in central Vienna served as the main seat of the Habsburg dynasty. Construction began in the 13th century, and over 700 years of architectural evolution have produced a sprawling complex that covers around 240,000 square meters. Within its walls, styles range from Gothic and Renaissance to Baroque and Rococo, reflecting the many phases of expansion initiated by successive rulers. Today, it continues to be a focal point of Austria's identity, housing the official residence of the President of Austria and the Austrian National Library. One of the most popular attractions at the Hofburg is the Imperial apartments, which invite visitors to step into the private chambers of Emperor Franz Joseph and Empress Elizabeth, better known as Empress Sisi. These rooms present a snapshot of how the imperial family lived, highlighting personal tastes and day-to-day customs. Another draw is the Sisi Museum, where more than 300 items bring Empress Elizabeth's story to life. Among the noteworthy exhibits are replicas of her Hungarian coronation gown, mourning jewelry worn after her son's tragic death, and a reconstruction of her railway sleeping car. Together, they convey the public adoration for a figure often portrayed in literature and film. The Imperial Treasury is another essential stop. Here, visitors can see the crown jewels of both the Holy Roman Empire and the Austrian Empire, including the imperial crown, orb, and scepter. These objects underscore the scope of Habsburg authority. The collection also features a legendary narwhal tusk, once mistaken for a unicorn horn, and the agate bowl from late antiquity, which was linked to medieval myths about the Holy Grail. This treasury preserves tangible connections to centuries of European history and myth. Adjacent to these regal exhibits is the Spanish riding school, renowned for its Lipizzaner horses and classical dressage performances. The Baroque winter riding school, constructed between 1729 and 1735, stages events that date back to courtly traditions of the 16th century. Both locals and visitors gather to witness the precise maneuvers that define high school horsemanship, underscoring the institution's long-standing dedication to equestrian artistry. Though much of the Hofburg's function has changed, a timeless charm remains. Seasonal highlights like the traditional Christmas market have taken place here since 1935, and the Austrian National Library's historic hall stands out as one of Europe's finest literary spaces. This library's ornate interior preserves volumes that illuminate scientific, artistic, and philosophical strides made during the Habsburg era. Taken as a whole, the Hofburg complex demonstrates the breadth of imperial influence. Art, ceremony, and governance converged in these corridors, leaving behind a legacy visible in architectural layers and collections of priceless artifacts. The palace allows modern observers to consider how politics, culture, and daily life blended within the vast network of Habsburg power. Number 3. Hofburg Innsbruck, Tyrol. Alongside Vienna's imperial landmarks, the Hofburg in Innsbruck stands as one of Austria's foremost historic cultural sites. With origins tracing back to the 15th century, it embodies the grandeur favored by Habsburg rulers, yet its location in the Tyrolean Alps lends it a distinct character. Initial construction is credited to Archduke Sigmund the Rich, who began raising the core structure in late Gothic style. Emperor Maximilian I later contributed his own vision, though the most transformative renovations were conducted under Empress Maria Theresa in the 18th century, introducing Viennese Rococo details that survive to this day. Among the palace's main attractions is the Giant's Hall, recognized as Western Austria's grandest banquet room. Full-length portraits of Maria Theresa, Francis Stephen of Lorraine, and their 16 children line the hall, all created by Martin van Muytens and his workshop. Above, Franz Anton Malbertsch's ceiling frescoes from around 1770 display themes like the union of the Habsburg and Lorraine dynasties. The room accommodates over 170 guests and took its name from earlier Hercules frescoes that once adorned the walls. These visual statements reveal how rulers cultivated an image of prosperity and continuity through art. Another highlight is the Empress Elizabeth apartment, returned to its 18th century appearance with appropriate furnishings. Visitors can see a salon, a study, a dressing room, and several bedrooms, each painted in different hues that reflect the late 19th century aesthetic. This area offers a closer look at daily imperial routines, from personal grooming practices to the design preferences popular during the Habsburg monarchy's twilight years. The palace further houses a Habsburg portrait gallery along its ceremonial staircase, featuring depictions of emperors from Joseph I through Franz Joseph I. These images capture a dynasty's lineage and evolving identity across 2 centuries. The guard hall exhibits large-scale battle scenes related to the Ottoman Wars, specifically highlighting Charles V of Lorraine's role. On a similar historical note, the council chamber displays major orders such as the Order of St. Stephen, the Order of the Golden Fleece, and the German Order. In a more reflective space, the Hofburg Chapel, erected in 1765 to 1766, occupies the very room where Emperor Francis I died. Its Rococo decorations include a cartouche carrying Maria Theresa's initials, intertwining personal remembrance with religious devotion. Today, the Hofburg in Innsbruck functions as a museum that preserves architectural and cultural heritage. Visitors can walk through rooms still adorned with 18th century furnishings, stand beneath Baroque frescoes, and appreciate the extensive art collections moved here from Vienna. These elements tell a story of a powerful dynasty that shaped Central Europe's political, artistic, and social development. By combining alpine scenery with imperial extravagance, the Hofburg Innsbruck provides an unconventional lens on Habsburg history and the family's lasting impact. Number 4. Schloss Ambras, Innsbruck. Standing on a hill overlooking Innsbruck, Schloss Ambras exemplifies the Renaissance spirit favoured by certain Habsburg patrons in the 16th century. Archduke Ferdinand I spearheaded its transformation, shaping it into a residence that reflected a deep interest in art, science, and collecting rare objects. The structure's foundations go back to the 10th century, but it was under Ferdinand II that an extensive Renaissance redesign took place between 1563 and 1595. Today, it is affiliated with the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna and remains a place where art meets architectural innovation. One of the best-known features is the Spanish Hall, a light-filled ceremonial space approximately 43 meters long and 10 meters wide. 33 arches line its sides, and it displays 27 portraits of Tyrolean rulers, each set against a background of allegorical themes and mythological references. The hall also hosts concerts and events, including the Ambras Castle concerts and programs for the Innsbruck Festival of Early Music. The Renaissance aesthetic shines through in the vibrant frescoes that decorate the walls and ceiling. Another remarkable draw is the Habsburg Portrait Gallery, with over 200 portraits from the 15th to the 19th centuries. Esteemed artists such as Lucas Cranach the Younger, Giuseppe Arcimboldo, Peter Paul Rubens, and Diego Velázquez contributed to this collection. Visitors can follow a visual chronology of Habsburg figures, starting with Albert III and concluding with Emperor Francis I. Each portrait underscores how dynastic imagery played a critical role in asserting authority and shaping public perceptions of the family's power. The Chamber of Art and Curiosities, often called a Kunstkammer, stands out for its historical significance. It remains in its original location and showcases an eclectic mix of items, including scientific instruments, natural marvels, and objects acquired from diverse parts of the world. During the 16th century, having such a display was a mark of sophistication and intellectual curiosity. Archduke Ferdinand II was especially keen on bridging the gap between art and the sciences, which is evident in the wide range of curiosities on show. Additionally, Schloss Ambras boasts the armories, where the hero's armory features 121 suits of armor worn by well-known military leaders. The Strasser glass collection presents one of the largest assortments of Renaissance and Baroque glassware, reflecting the era's technological and artistic achievements. The bathing chambers of Philippine Welser, Ferdinand II's wife, still exist and highlight daily comforts from centuries past. A section known as the Gothic Hall preserves late medieval sculptures and Emperor Maximilian I's St. George's altar, connecting multiple periods of art within the same estate. Today, Schloss Ambras appeals to families as well as art enthusiasts with its English-style gardens, duck pond and playground. Its enduring cultural importance stems from an unusual melding of collecting, scholarship and architecture, revealing how certain Habsburg figures blended personal taste with global influences to create a unique environment. Number 5. El Escorial, Spain. Though it stands outside Austrian borders, El Escorial near Madrid underscores how far-reaching Habsburg authority once was. Commissioned by King Philip II of Spain between 1563 and 1584, it ranks among the most ambitious projects of the Renaissance. The complex covers about 33,000 square meters and incorporates a royal palace, monastery, basilica, library, museum, school, and the Pantheon of Kings. Its original design is said to mirror descriptions of Solomon's Temple, and the floor plan forms a gridiron shape that commemorates the martyrdom of St. Lawrence. These architectural details led some observers to call it the eighth wonder of the world. The royal palace section served as the principal residence of Spanish monarchs. Philip II's private apartments there reflect his religious fervor, featuring a window that allowed him to attend Mass from bed when gout rendered him immobile. Visitors can also see the Hall of Battles, adorned with frescoes illustrating key Spanish victories. This room underscores the dynasty's efforts to weave together faith and military power, an approach visible throughout the entire structure. Meanwhile, the monastery portion was originally entrusted to Hieronymite monks, though it is now managed by the Order of St. Augustine. This religious hub holds a legendary library that still houses more than 75,000 early printed books and manuscripts, including texts on esoteric subjects once studied with caution. Another noteworthy element is one of the most comprehensive reliquaries in Europe, which is open to public viewing on specific feast days. Royal patrons intended these displays to legitimize their rulership by highlighting their devotion and spiritual standing. Deep within El Escorial lies the Pantheon of Kings, where the remains of many Habsburg and Bourbon monarchs rest. In total, 26 marble sepulchres line this space, containing members of the royal lineage from Charles I onward. A pudridero, or decaying chamber, is used to allow remains to decompose before their final placement. The most recent monarch interred here is King Alfonso XIII, brought to El Escorial in 1980. Visitors find it a solemn contrast to the building's more public areas, emphasizing the dynasty's lasting presence in Spanish history. Beyond its primary functions as a palace and religious center, El Escorial houses a basilica featuring a dome inspired by St. Peter's in Rome and a royal library with frescoes reminiscent of the Sistine Chapel's grandeur. The overall structure includes more than 4,000 rooms, 1,200 doors, and over 2,600 windows. These features point to a vision that melded imperial might with Catholic identity, shaping a cultural complex where art and devotion converge. Modern visitors encounter a monument that preserves the essence of Spain's golden age. Each hall, chapel, and gallery recounts the ways Habsburg sovereignty extended beyond Austria's borders and into the center of Iberian power. El Escorial remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site, celebrating the blend of spiritual ideals, scholarly pursuits, and royal ambitions that characterized Philip II's remarkable reign. 3 centuries of absolute power, unlimited wealth, and artistic genius created something extraordinary in Russia's imperial capitals, a world where architecture touched divinity and luxury knew no bounds. The Romanovs built their palaces not just as homes, but as statements to the world, crafting spaces where a single amber-covered room could cost more than a modern office tower. Through halls longer than Olympic pools and past fountains that danced without electricity, these residences witnessed history's most dramatic moments. Some chambers remain exactly as their last imperial occupants left them, frozen in time since revolution's thunder. Others required generations of modern masters to resurrect their splendor from war's ashes. In today's episode, we'll take you on a one-of-a-kind tour of their most opulent residences, starting with one of their best. Number 1. Winter Palace, St. Petersburg. At the pinnacle of Russian imperial might stands the Winter Palace, a colossal Baroque masterpiece that served as the official residence of Russian emperors from 1732 to 1917. Rising from the banks of the Neva River in St. Petersburg, this architectural triumph spans 233,345 square meters, encompassing 1,500 rooms that whisper tales of power, revolution, and dramatic social transformation. The palace reached its final magnificent form under Italian architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli, who completed his vision in 1762. Its monumental principal facade extends 215 meters, dominating Palace Square with an intricate display of Baroque artistry. The striking exterior, painted in rich shades of green and white, features elaborate stucco moldings, while 176 sculptured figures stand eternal watch along the roofline. Within its walls, a remarkable 1,886 doors and 1,945 windows create an intricate maze of imperial grandeur. The piano nobile, occupying the first floor, housed the principal staterooms and living quarters of the imperial family. Above, the second floor accommodated senior courtiers and high-ranking officials, maintaining strict hierarchical divisions that characterized court life. Each room tells its own story of power and prestige. The Jordan staircase, with its gilded carvings and marble steps, welcomed foreign diplomats and nobility. The Field Marshal's Hall displayed portraits of military heroes, while the Alexander Hall, dedicated to Emperor Alexander I, dazzled visitors with white columns and military trophies captured during the Napoleonic Wars. The Winter Palace witnessed pivotal moments that shaped Russia's destiny. Here, emperors proclaimed wars and negotiated peace. The first Russian State Duma opened within these walls in 1906, marking a brief experiment with parliamentary democracy. In 1914, Emperor Nicholas II stood on its balcony, rallying troops as they departed for World War I. Yet the palace's central location, while perfect for displays of imperial authority, eventually became a vulnerability. The events of Bloody Sunday in 1905, when peaceful protesters met with military force on Palace Square, marked a turning point. Later, Tsars increasingly sought refuge in more secluded residences, though the Winter Palace remained the official seat of power until 1917. In that fateful year, the palace became the stage for revolution. The provisional government's last stand occurred in its halls, and its fall to Bolshevik forces symbolized the end of 300 years of Romanov rule. Today, as part of the State Hermitage Museum, its rooms house one of the world's greatest art collections, allowing visitors to walk the same corridors where Russian emperors once shaped the fate of an empire spanning 1/6 of the Earth's landmass. For any explorer of Russian imperial heritage, the Winter Palace offers an unparalleled window into the grandeur and complexity of Romanov rule. Yet while this St. Petersburg icon may be the most famous of Russia's imperial residences, the Catherine Palace in nearby Tsarskoye Selo reveals an equally compelling story of royal ambition and artistic achievement. Number 2. Catherine Palace, Tsarskoye Selo. Rising from the grounds of Tsarskoye Selo, 30 kilometers south of St. Petersburg, the Catherine Palace emerged from modest beginnings to become one of Imperial Russia's most resplendent architectural achievements. What began in 1717 as a simple two-story building commissioned by Catherine I, wife of Peter the Great, evolved into a magnificent display of Russian Baroque splendor through successive imperial visions. The palace underwent its most dramatic transformation under Empress Elizabeth, daughter of Peter and Catherine. In 1752, she commissioned Bartolomeo Francesco Rastrelli to reimagine the structure entirely. Rastrelli's design produced an architectural masterpiece, its blue and white stucco facade adorned with a profusion of Atlantes, caryatids, and pilasters that created an unforgettable silhouette against the Russian sky. Inside, Rastrelli's genius manifested in 58 halls of increasing opulence. The golden enfilade, a succession of staterooms, exemplified the Rococo style at its zenith, with walls dressed in gold leaf and intricate stucco work that dazzled visitors and courtiers alike. Yet among these spectacular chambers, one room surpassed all others in its legendary status, the Amber Room, often celebrated as the eighth wonder of the world. Originally created for Prussia's Frederick I in the early 18th century and gifted to Peter the Great in 1716, the Amber Room represented the pinnacle of Baroque decorative arts. 6 tons of amber and semi-precious stones, backed with gold leaf, covered approximately 180 square feet of wall space, creating an amber-hued sanctuary valued at $142 million in today's currency. The palace's history took a dark turn during World War II. German forces, recognizing the Amber Room's cultural significance, dismantled it within 36 hours in 1941, packing its precious panels into 27 crates bound for Königsberg. The room's subsequent fate remains one of art history's greatest mysteries, last seen in Königsberg Castle in 1945, before vanishing into the fog of war. In 1979, Soviet authorities embarked on an ambitious project to recreate the Amber Room. This painstaking process, spanning 24 years and involving Russia's most skilled craftsmen, culminated in the room's triumphant reopening in 2003. The reconstructed chamber now stands as a brilliant testament to Russian craftsmanship and cultural perseverance. Today's visitors discover a palace that bridges multiple artistic epochs. Beyond Rastrelli's Baroque extravagance, they encounter the refined neoclassical interiors commissioned by Catherine the Great and executed by Scottish architect Charles Cameron. His agate rooms and the Cameron Gallery reflect Catherine's sophisticated taste and fascination with classical antiquity. While the Catherine Palace astounds visitors with its artistic treasures and imperial splendor, another remarkable Romanov residence beckons. The Peterhof Palace, with its spectacular fountains and gardens, presents an equally ambitious vision of royal power projected through architectural magnificence. Number 3. Peterhof Palace, St. Petersburg. Along the shores of the Gulf of Finland, 30 kilometers west of St. Petersburg, rises Peterhof Palace, Russia's bold response to the grandeur of Versailles. Commissioned in the early 18th century by Peter the Great, this magnificent complex emerged as a powerful statement of Russia's arrival on the European stage, combining regal splendor with engineering ingenuity. Construction began in 1714, culminating in a grand opening ceremony on the 15th of August, 1723. Peter the Great's personal involvement in the design process proved extensive, with over 10 of his handmade drawings and numerous annotated sketches surviving to this day. His vision transformed a coastal site into an imperial residence that would rival the greatest palaces of Europe. The Grand Palace, though imposing in appearance, maintains relatively modest proportions with approximately 30 rooms. Originally conceived as a two-story villa with side wings, it underwent significant expansion during Empress Elizabeth's reign. Italian architect Bartolomeo Rastrelli elevated the structure literally and figuratively, adding a third floor, new wing, and small dome church that defined its Baroque character. Within the palace walls, each room tells a story of evolving imperial tastes. Peter the Great's oak study remains preserved in its original state, offering intimate glimpses into the emperor's private world. The throne room, later enhanced by Yuri Felton during Catherine the Great's reign, spans an impressive 300 square meters, showcasing a gallery of Romanov portraits. The Chesma Hall displays 12 large paintings by Jacob Philip Hackett, commemorating Russia's naval triumph at the Battle of Chesma. Yet Peterhof's true marvel lies in its revolutionary fountain system. The lower park, designed in formal French style, features an astonishing network of 140 fountains operating entirely through natural gravity, an engineering feat conceived by Peter the Great himself. The Grand Cascade stands as the crown jewel, where 64 fountains and 200 bronze statues create a mesmerizing aquatic display. At its heart, the Samson Fountain depicts the biblical hero wrestling a lion's jaws apart, symbolizing Russia's victory over Sweden in the Great Northern War. Like many Russian imperial treasures, Peterhof suffered greatly during World War II under German occupation. However, dedicated restoration efforts began immediately after liberation, continuing through to the present day. In 1990, UNESCO recognized the palace's exceptional value by inscribing it on the World Heritage List. Modern visitors to Peterhof experience a harmonious blend of natural beauty, architectural achievement, and technological innovation. The palace grounds continue to demonstrate Peter the Great's vision of Russian power and sophistication, while the fountains perform their gravity-defying dance just as they did 3 centuries ago. While Peterhof dazzles with its outdoor spectacles and formal grandeur, the Alexander Palace presents a more intimate side of imperial life, where the last Romanovs sought refuge from the pressures of rule. Number 4. Alexander Palace, Tsarskoye Selo. In the imperial compound of Tsarskoye Selo stands the Alexander Palace, a masterwork of Russian neoclassical architecture that would become the stage for the Romanov dynasty's final act. Commissioned by Catherine the Great in 1792 for her grandson, the future Emperor Alexander I, the palace rose swiftly from the ground, completed in just 4 years under the skilled direction of Italian architect Giacomo Quarenghi. Though Alexander I himself spent limited time within its walls after ascending to the throne, subsequent generations of Romanovs embraced the palace with increasing devotion. Nicholas I, in particular, poured resources into enhancing both the interiors and surrounding grounds, establishing the foundation for what would become a cherished family retreat. The palace reached its zenith of historical significance during the reign of Nicholas II. Following the tumultuous events of 1905 that shook imperial authority, Nicholas II and Alexandra Feodorovna chose these halls as their permanent residence, valuing the relative seclusion compared to St. Petersburg's more exposed Winter Palace. The imperial couple reshaped their surroundings to match their tastes, notably transforming the former 2-story ballroom into the Maple Room and the new study. Perhaps most striking were the changes introduced by Empress Alexandra, who collaborated with architect Meltzer to incorporate Art Nouveau elements throughout the interiors. This decision sparked controversy among conservative courtiers who viewed the modern style as inappropriately bourgeois for imperial quarters. Their protests went unheeded as Alexandra created intimate spaces that reflected her personal aesthetic rather than traditional palatial grandeur. The Alexander Palace witnessed both the twilight of imperial rule and its final eclipse. After Nicholas II's abdication in February 1917, these same walls that had provided sanctuary became a gilded prison as the imperial family endured months of house arrest before their fateful transfer to Siberia. From these grounds began their last journey, ending in Yekaterinburg in July 1918. The decades following the revolution saw the palace serve various functions, from museum to orphanage, vacation retreat for NKVD workers, and even German military headquarters during World War II. Each iteration left its mark on the structure, contributing to its gradual decline until recent years brought renewal. August 2021 marked a new chapter as the Alexander Palace reopened to the public following extensive renovations. The first phase restored 13 rooms within the personal apartments of Nicholas I, Alexandra, and their children. These meticulously reconstructed interiors now display original furnishings and personal effects, offering visitors intimate glimpses into the private world of Russia's last imperial family. While the Alexander Palace reveals the personal side of imperial life, the Gatchina Palace presents yet another facet of Romanov rule, a unique blend of medieval fortress and classical palace that served as a sanctuary for Emperor Alexander III. Number 5. Gatchina Palace. Rising from Russian soil as a striking fusion of classical palace and medieval fortress, the Gatchina Palace emerged in 1766 under Catherine the Great's patronage. Initially constructed for her favorite, Count Grigory Orlov, the palace took shape through Italian architect Antonio Rinaldi's distinctive vision, blending European royal grandeur with robust Russian character. The palace's commanding presence stems from its unique architectural elements. Crafted from local Pudust limestone, the three-story central building stands flanked by pentagonal towers, while semicircular galleries connect it to single-story service wings. This remarkable combination created an imperial residence that projected both elegance and strength across the surrounding landscape. Following Orlov's death in 1783, Catherine II repurchased the estate, presenting it to her son, the future Emperor Paul I. Under Paul's direction, the palace underwent substantial transformation. Architect Vincenzo Brenner enhanced its fortress-like qualities, reflecting the emperor's military interests and creating a structure that symbolized both imperial power and defensive might. The 19th century brought waves of change to Gatchina. Emperor Nicholas I initiated major reconstruction efforts in the 1840s, engaging architect Roman Ivanovich Kuzmin. These renovations elevated the main square, added basement levels, and updated decorative elements to align with contemporary tastes. Yet it was Emperor Alexander III who truly made Gatchina his own, transforming it into the primary imperial residence following his father's assassination in 1881. Under Alexander III's reign, Gatchina earned its reputation as the citadel of autocracy. The emperor modernized the palace extensively, introducing indoor heating, electric lighting, telephone networks, and advanced plumbing systems. His passion for hunting influenced the palace's character, particularly visible in the arsenal room and bare staircase, where impressive trophies adorned the walls. The palace's significance extended beyond its walls, as Gatchina effectively became the Russian Empire's de facto capital during Alexander III's reign. The surrounding town expanded rapidly, accommodating an influx of courtiers, officials, and military officers. The extensive English landscape park provided space for royal entertainments, from hunting expeditions to winter sporting activities like skiing and sledding. The future Nicholas II spent his formative years at Gatchina, growing up in the relatively modest private apartments of his parents. These rooms, preserved today, offer striking contrast to the palace's grand state chambers, revealing the private face of imperial life. The juxtaposition of formal splendor and family intimacy creates a unique window into the complex world of Russian royalty. Today, Gatchina Palace stands as a museum and UNESCO World Heritage Site, preserving centuries of imperial history within its limestone walls. Visitors explore the staterooms of Paul I and Maria Feodorovna, the private quarters of later Tsars, and exhibitions chronicling the palace's pivotal role in Russian history. Through its halls echo the footsteps of emperors who shaped an empire, each leaving their mark on this remarkable blend of fortress and palace. Nestled in the heart of Northumberland, Alnwick Castle stands as a colossal giant, its stone ramparts and spiralling turrets reaching skyward, commanding the English landscape with a majesty that whispers of its ancient origins. And this castle, the largest of its kind in Britain not inhabited by the royal family itself, has been the prestigious stronghold of the Percy family, embodying a legacy steeped in nobility and the tumultuous history of British aristocracy. Yet, despite its initial splendor, there came a darker era when Alnwick's mighty halls fell silent. Indeed, the Percy family, once the very lifeblood of the castle, withdrew, leaving it essentially abandoned and a hollow echo of its former self. The grand dining halls, which had hosted kings and queens, lay deserted. The lush, expansive gardens grew wild and untamed. Alnwick Castle, a jewel of medieval architecture, seemed destined to crumble away, forgotten by time. But fate had a grander vision. With a resilience forged from centuries of monumental cultural importance, Alnwick Castle rose once more. Through vigorous restoration efforts, fueled by legendary architects and horticulturalists spanning hundreds of years, the castle was reborn. In today's episode, we'll not only give you a guided tour of this illustrious home, but also dive a bit deeper and explain how one of England's most beautiful castles avoided the wrecking ball, as we describe why the UK's largest private castle was abandoned, the wild history of Alnwick Castle. Alnwick Castle, nestled like a medieval dream in the verdant folds of Northumberland, England, carries the weight of history with a flair that's almost cheeky. Indeed, it's the largest castle in the UK not inhabited by the royal family itself, and has been the Percy family's pad for over 7 centuries, and the 12th Duke of Northumberland, Ralph Percy, has the keys to the kingdom now, having bagged the title and the castle back in 1995. Now the Percys took the real estate plunge in 1309, when Lord Henry Percy snapped up the castle and the barony of Alnwick. And since then, it's been a generational hand-me-down, albeit one with stone walls and a few drafts. Over the years, the castle has played host to a parade of Percys who were warriors, strategists, and diplomats, ensuring that family dinners were probably never dull. But Alnwick Castle isn't just about dusty old history books. It's a star of the screen, too. Thus, if the stone walls could talk, they'd name-drop quite a bit. This medieval marvel has moonlighted as Hogwarts in the first 2 Harry Potter flicks, where it taught young wizards the finer points of broomstick management and Quidditch, and when, not doubling as a school for magic, Alnwick has rubbed shoulders with the aristocracy of Downton Abbey as the grand Brancaster Castle in the show's Christmas specials. It's even done a stint in the robot-riddled world of Transformers: The Last Knight. Other credits include playing host to Cate Blanchett's Queen Elizabeth I in Elizabeth and serving as a backdrop in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. But the castle's cinematic repertoire stretches even further back, with turns in The Scarlet Pimpernel and Roman Polanski's Macbeth. And beyond its film credits, Alnwick Castle is a fortress to be reckoned with. The structure boasts a double bailey layout. That's castle speak for 2 rings of defence walls. At its core, the shell keep is a circle of 10 towers, quite the architectural twist compared to the usual square keeps of its peers. The castle's aesthetic is further completed by an ensemble of towers and turrets. The octagon and bow towers make a striking duo by the entrance, practically winking at visitors. And the castle's practical side includes 10 other towers like the Postern Tower, Constable's Tower, and the Clock Tower, each adding a chapter to Alnwick's long story. Some are D-shaped, a medieval hack for better defence, while others are more rectangular, offering cushier digs for their inhabitants. The gatehouse, defended by 2 semi-octagonal towers, throws in a barbican for good measure, because why have one line of defence when you can have 2? Now, upon entering Alnwick Castle, visitors find themselves whisked into a realm where opulence meshes with centuries of history. The staterooms, given a facelift in the 19th century, are a symbol of the Percy family's penchant for splendor and sophisticated taste. Certainly, the lower and upper guard chambers don't just greet guests. They dazzle with a collection of arms and accoutrements, relics from the late 18th century that have seen their share of stories. Yet, the pièce de résistance of the castle's interiors is undoubtedly the library. Nestled within the vastness of a large tower added during the 19th century renovations, it is a bibliophile's paradise with nearly 15,000 tomes. And the drawing room, dripping in Italianate grandeur, flaunts a ceiling that's a riot of carved, painted and gilded artistry, silk wall hangings, and a mirror that's more overmantel than mere reflection. Then the Great Hall, reborn as the state dining room, remains the throbbing heart of castle life, a medieval space continually pulsing with the beat of the present-day Percy family. Not to be outshone, the China Gallery parades a formidable array of Meissen, Chelsea and Paris ceramics, an opulent nod to the European porcelain palaces of yesteryears. But the allure of Alnwick doesn't stop at the castle doors. The Alnwick Garden, a visionary creation by the Duchess of Northumberland in 2001, combines horticultural finesse with contemporary design in a charity setting. The layout is a tapestry of unique horticultural sections that bewitch and bedazzle visitors. Take the Grand Cascade, for instance, a theatrical water display that plays out its dramatic sequences every half hour. Sponsored by Sage Wealth Management, this aquatic ballet takes place on a landscaped hillside with serpentine paths providing various vantage points to witness the waters dance. A darker allure is found in the Poison Garden, encased in mystery and danger, where about 100 toxic, intoxicating and narcotic plants thrive behind bars, literally. This garden, with its ivy-draped tunnels and flame-shaped beds, offers guided tours that delve into the lethal, the historical, and the downright scandalous stories of plants used in infamous poisonings. Not all is deadly in the gardens, however. The Serpent Garden weds physics with fun, offering an interactive water playground that delights families, while the Rose Garden is a fragrant feast of 3,000 English roses, including the celebrated Alnwick Rose, unveiled at the 2001 Chelsea Flower Show. Adding to the artistic flair, a bronze sculpture by Barbara Hepworth, Ascending Form, graces the garden, on loan from the Arts Council. Thus, these days, Alnwick Castle is more than just a historical artifact. It's a vibrant cultural hub. With an array of tours, events and exhibitions, the castle and its gardens offer an immersive experience into the lives of the Percy family and beyond. And yet, there was a time in which this majestic abode laid abandoned and deserted, ravaged by centuries of war on Albion. In order to find out how it got that way and how it made its magnificent resurgence, we'll have to go back in time to the days of William the Conqueror. The saga of Alnwick Castle, a beacon of medieval might in England, stretches back nearly a millennium to 1096. That's when Yves de Vesey, a Norman baron of no small ambition, recognised a good thing near the Scottish border. He started with a humble Motte Bailey, basically the starter castle model, to assert Norman clout and ward off any Scottish party crashers. The de Vesey family wasn't content with basic, however. By the 12th century, they began swapping wood for stone, upgrading their home to better reflect their burgeoning status and fortify against the ceaseless neighbourhood squabbles of medieval Northumberland. Therefore, this locale wasn't just prime real estate, it was a critical bulwark in England's defensive line, earning its stripes in skirmishes galore. By the time the 12th and 13th centuries rolled around, Alnwick wasn't just a castle, it was a key player in the Anglo-Scottish soap opera. It stood firm against the likes of William the Lion, King of Scotland, who found Alnwick's defences a tough nut to crack in 1172. The castle's resilience in repelling William's forces solidified its rep as a fortress not to be messed with. Drama escalated in 1215 when King John, the trust-no-one type, ordered Alnwick's destruction, suspecting Eustace de Vesey of backstabbing. The castle's stones, however, remained unturned. showcasing the intrigue that swirled around this northern citadel. The De Vescie era wrapped up in 1297, the family tree having run out of male heirs, leading to a game of feudal hot potato until Henry Percy grabbed it in 1309. Enter the Percy dynasty, and Alnwick's narrative took on new layers. The 13th century had the castle beefing up its walls and towers, gearing up to deflect Scottish raids and throw some punches of its own. However, Alnwick wasn't all about warfare. It also blossomed as a cultural and political hub. The Percy lords didn't just fight, they ruled, feasted and played host to royalty, turning the castle into a northern nexus of medieval magnificence. But the Percy touch in the 14th century also transformed Alnwick beyond a mere military outpost. Under their watch, the castle sprouted additional towers and garrets, enhancing its fortifications while also boosting its residential appeal. And stone figures began to haunt the battlements, part decor, part psychological warfare, to befuddle any attackers. But this period wasn't just about architectural upgrades. In 1327, King Robert the Bruce of Scotland tested Alnwick's mettle with a siege, but the Percy fortified defences stood their ground. By century's end, Alnwick had morphed from a basic Norman construct into a robust emblem of feudal endurance. As the 15th century dawned, Alnwick Castle teemed with life, balancing military duties with the domestic bustle. It was a hive of activity for the Percy nobility, from knights and soldiers bracing for battle to servants and craftsmen maintaining the daily grind. Thus, with a clear division of roles, the castle operated like a well-oiled medieval machine. Whether it was managing vast estates, entertaining high-profile guests, or maintaining readiness for combat, Alnwick Castle was both a stage and a fortress, a place where history was not only made, but lived. However, the coming centuries would take the castle from strength to weakness, as abandonment and desertion for the illustrious building waited in the shadows. The year 1572 brought dark clouds over Alnwick Castle with the execution of Thomas Percy, the 7th Earl of Northumberland, and his staunch Catholic faith led him to the ill-fated rising of the North against Queen Elizabeth I. After the rebellion's flop, he escaped to Scotland, only to be captured and held captive at Lochleven Castle. 3 years and £2,000 later, he was sold to the English government and beheaded in York for his troubles. On that grim day in August 1572, as Thomas Percy faced the axe on pavement in York, he declined a life-saving renunciation of his faith, opting instead for martyrdom, and his execution not only heralded a loss for the Percys, but also signalled the forfeiture of various titles and lands, though, through a quirk of legal fate, not all was lost. Next, this period saw the younger brother, Henry Percy, stepping into the title as the 8th Earl of Northumberland, navigating the turbulent waters left by Thomas's political and religious fervour. Alnwick Castle, amidst these upheavals, faced its own set of challenges, its stature and influence waning in the shadow of rebellion and retribution. As the calendar pages turned to the 17th century, Alnwick Castle slipped further from its former glory, succumbing to neglect as the Percy family favoured their southern residences. The once vibrant castle began to crumble, its battlements no longer bustling with the energy of yesteryears, and the shift in the family's attentions left the castle a mere shadow of its past. The English Civil War, however, thrust Alnwick back into strategic prominence. You see, Oliver Cromwell, spotting its value on the chessboard of his military campaigns, seized the castle for his uses. Unfortunately, the garrison life and war demands did no favours to the structure's integrity, hastening its decline into disrepair. By the time the 17th century drew to a close, Alnwick Castle was not much more than a picturesque ruin. Trees rooted in its walls as nature reclaimed its stones. A telling piece from this era, a painting by Peter Hartover, captures the desolate state of its chapel, underscoring the depth of its fall from grace. The 18th century, however, would mark a renaissance for Alnwick Castle, spearheaded by the visionary architect Robert Adam. Tasked with its restoration from 1769 to 1783, visionary architect Robert Adam infused Alnwick Castle with the neoclassical elegance of the Adam Gothic revival style. And his efforts were not confined to mere beautification, but extended to fortifying the castle's social stature through lavish redesigns of the principal rooms and even the external structures like Hulne Abbey and the Lion Bridge. Preceding Adam, architects James Paine and Daniel Garrett laid the groundwork for Alnwick's revival. Paine, from 1754 to 1768, focused on making the ruins habitable again, blending functionality with elegance. Garrett, on the other hand, introduced Rococo plasterwork and Gothic revival elements that would define much of the castle's early restoration efforts. Not to be overlooked, the landscape architect Lancelot Capability Brown reshaped the castle's surroundings into the picturesque parkland seen today. His work from around 1765 not only enhanced the castle's aesthetic, but also its geographical narrative, with carefully designed weirs and raised causeways that framed the castle dramatically against the Northumberland countryside. Thus, through the combined genius of architects and landscapers, Alnwick Castle was reborn, a fortress restored not just in stone and mortar, but as a symbol of enduring legacy and architectural grandeur, ready to face the centuries anew. Next, Algernon Percy, the fourth Duke of Northumberland, brought a veritable renaissance to Alnwick Castle when he assumed the dukedom in 1847. Born in 1792 and seasoned by a distinguished naval career, Algernon was a man of cultivated tastes, his passions ranging from the celestial in astronomy to the earthly in archaeology and the arts. It was in 1854, with the ink still fresh on his title, that he embarked on a grand project to revamp the venerable castle, ensuring it mirrored both his status and eclectic interests. At the spry age of 62, Algernon envisioned the ancient fortress as a beacon of both medieval splendor and modern comfort, a palace fit for a duke of the industrial age, yet resonant with echoes of its storied past. To realize this vision, he enlisted Anthony Salvin, an architect celebrated for his deft touch in reviving medieval structures. Salvin's portfolio boasted meticulous restorations of Norwich, Newark, and Carisbrooke castles, marking him as the ideal craftsman for Algernon's ambitious endeavor. The blueprint for Alnwick's transformation was both respectful of its ancient bones and eager for modern flesh. Salvin's plans strived for a balance, enhancing the castle's historic martial facade while weaving in the comforts expected by 19th-century aristocracy. One of the boldest moves was the erection of the Prudhoe Tower, a new addition that replaced an older structure, offering luxurious quarters that merged seamlessly with the medieval aesthetic. And externally, Salvin's touch was subtle yet profound. He replaced anachronistic sash windows with lancets and mullioned windows, aligning more authentically with the castle's original period. The entrance was grandly redefined by a new porte-cochere, elevating the first impressions of arriving guests to that of regal splendor. Internally, the overhaul was more radical. Salvin reimagined the flow and function of Alnwick's inner sanctums, aiming to brighten living spaces with natural light and improve connectivity between rooms. This was not merely a facelift, but a reconfiguration of the castle's heart, aligning its chambers and halls with both the practicalities of contemporary life and the ceremonial duties of a duke's residence. And Algernon's ambitions for Alnwick went beyond mere architecture. He envisaged the castle not just as a family home, but as a gallery for his extensive art collection and a testament to his diverse scholarly interests. Therefore, under his guidance, the restoration became a cultural project, embedding his personal legacy within the very stones of Alnwick. As the work unfolded, it became clear that this was no ordinary renovation. The project, under the dual stewardship of Algernon and Salvin, was transforming Alnwick Castle into a paragon of how modern sensibilities and historical reverence could coexist. By the time the last scaffold was dismantled, Alnwick had been metamorphosed into a residence that was as much a museum of the Duke's tastes as it was a fortress of old. It would then be in our modern 21st century that Alnwick would be seen by millions at perhaps its most beautiful time ever. The modern 21st century Alnwick Castle masterfully balances its ancient heritage with the buzz of modern life. And Alnwick's allure now extends beyond its aesthetic achievements, morphing into a veritable playground of historical reenactments and interactive tours. The castle grounds resonate with the echoes of broomstick training sessions, a nod to its cinematic alter ego, Hogwarts. Archery lessons pull another thread from the medieval fabric, offering hands-on engagement with the castle's combative past. These initiatives serve dual purposes: enchantment and education, pulling visitors deep into the folds of Alnwick's rich narrative. With an eye always on the horizon, Alnwick is a fortress in flux, committed to both preserving its skeletal integrity and enhancing its visitor appeal. Recent restoration efforts have seen the fortification of its curtain walls and the embellishment of its architectural details, ensuring it stands robust against the ravages of time. Even the minutiae, like the installation of lightning conductors, are handled with a care that respects the past while safeguarding the future. And the future vision for Alnwick stretches beyond the immediate confines of the castle. A key project on the horizon is the rejuvenation of Alnwick Station, a Victorian relic now home to the beloved Barter books. This initiative will preserve the structure's historic essence while enhancing its community value. Similarly, the Percy Tenantry column is set for a makeover that includes energy-efficient lighting solutions, blending historical reverence with modern sustainability. As Alnwick Castle strides into the future, it continues to wear its triple crown with grace, as a family residence, a beacon of history, and a vibrant tourist hub. Through a synthesis of preservation, innovation, and robust public engagement, it stands poised to keep its legacy vibrant and accessible for future generations, ensuring that the castle remains not only a repository of history, but a cornerstone of cultural vitality. Nestled in the lush rolling hills of West Sussex, Arundel Castle stands as a stunning, iconic example of medieval English architectural magnificence and historical grandeur. With its towering keep and fairy tale turrets, the castle commands awe-inspiring views across the Arun Valley, drawing visitors from around the globe to bask in its opulent halls and exquisite gardens. And as you stroll through its lavishly decorated rooms, it is easy to be transported back through centuries of royal banquets and splendid ceremonies, each corner and corridor echoing the footsteps of dukes and duchesses. Yet, behind its imposing facade and majestic presence, Arundel Castle harbours a lesser-known legacy of vulnerability and decay. Indeed, there was a time when this iconic edifice of heritage and power teetered on the edge of ruin, neglected for years, and the once resplendent castle once even faced the grim prospect of disrepair and deterioration, risking the loss of its historical essence and architectural beauty. In today's episode, we'll explain how such a legendary castle avoided this harrowing end, and the meticulous restoration process that saved one of Albion's most beloved structures, as we describe why Britain's historic Arundel Castle escaped destruction. Arundel Castle stands today as a spectacular mosaic of medieval architecture, extensively restored and remodeled over centuries. Initially built during the Norman era by Roger de Montgomery in the 11th century, the castle is a showcase of Norman and Gothic designs, with each architectural element narrating ancient tales. And if you were to visit the castle today, your tour might begin with the keep, the castle's most defining feature, constructed in the 12th century by William d'Albini II. This robust tower, replacing earlier wooden fortifications, commands a view over the River Arun and the South Downs from its vantage on a motte, and climbing its steep, narrow steps offers a glimpse into medieval strategic defences that deterred centuries of invaders. Adjacent lies the formidable gatehouse, built around 1070. This main entry, complete with a portcullis and drawbridge, served as the castle's protective barrier. And even today, its medieval prowess is tangible as you walk beneath its imposing structure. Nearby, the Barbican, an external fortification designed to trap attackers, demonstrates medieval military ingenuity with its thick walls, arrow slits, and battlements. This particular feature was crafted to ensnare enemies in a deadly labyrinth before reaching the castle's inner sanctum. As you move inside, the castle's 19th century Gothic revival enhancements would be evident. Under architect Charles Alban Buckler and the 15th Duke of Norfolk, the castle embraced a Victorian aesthetic, enhancing its medieval foundation with pointed arches, intricate stone carvings, and elaborate tracery. And the Grand Baron's Hall radiates historical presence, lined with portraits of the Dukes of Norfolk and furnished with 16th century continental pieces. This hall, along with the nearby Regency Library, outfitted in Honduras mahogany and home to more than 1,000 books, reflects a blend of regal elegance and scholarly depth, prepared for Queen Victoria's visit in 1846. Now, the ethereal Fitzalan Chapel, founded in 1380 and the burial site of the Dukes of Norfolk, highlights the 19th century Catholic revival in England. Its stained glass windows and decorative mosaics of vases and orange trees create a serene atmosphere, inviting reflection amid its historic and solemn beauty. And outside, the castle's gardens express horticultural mastery. Opened in 2008, the Collector Earl's Garden, designed by Isabel and Julian Bannerman, pays tribute to Thomas Howard, the 14th Earl of Arundel. It features a mix of fantastical and structured elements like a shellwork grotto, a golden fountain, and a rockwork mountain. Central to the garden is a formal court divided by a canal pond, bordered by cascades and surrounded by a wildflower labyrinth. The gardens, under head gardener Martin Duncan since 2009, blend sustainability with tradition. They include a wild water garden, a restored Victorian peach house, and a vinery filled with exotic plants. Of course, the crowning feature of this area is the rose garden, recognized for its meticulously selected blooms that contribute to a contemporary floral tapestry which earned the 2021 South and Southeast in Bloom Gold Award. Moreover, the gardens transform into a vibrant display during the annual Tulip Festival, featuring over 120,000 tulips in a dazzling array of colours. Yet, there was a time in the not-too-distant past where this breathtaking estate was on the brink of decay and largely forgotten by its illustrious owners, the Dukes of Norfolk. Let's turn over to the next chapter to find out exactly how Arundel Castle went from a borderline set of ruins to the majestic refurbished masterpiece we get to enjoy in the 21st century. Arundel Castle's foundations are deeply rooted in the drama of 1066's Norman conquest, and this formidable fortress owes its inception to the strategic savvy of Roger de Montgomery, cousin and right-hand man to none other than William the Conqueror. Now, while Roger did not clash swords at the Battle of Hastings, his contribution was no less pivotal. His role as Normandy's governor during William's campaign in England was crucial. With the conquest complete, William rewarded his circle of stalwarts, gifting Roger a sizable swath of Sussex on Christmas Day, 1067. With the newfound title of Earl of Arundel, Roger set about creating a bulwark against any threat to his sovereign's reign. The chosen location was a hill overlooking the River Arun, a site that promised both strategic superiority and panoramic views of the South Downs. Next, the construction of Arundel Castle began in earnest in 1068 with an ambitious project, an artificial mound or motte, rising over 100 feet above the dry moat. This monumental task symbolized Norman architectural ambition and marked the landscape with a clear signal of the new order. Atop this motte, a wooden keep initially rose, symbolizing the nascent stage of fortification, simple yet effective. Then, the transformation from wood to stone marked a significant evolution in the castle's fortitude. By 1070, the first stone gatehouse had been laid, signifying a shift towards more permanent, imposing structures. This blend of flint rubble and imported Caen stone not only solidified the castle's physical presence, but also its status as an impenetrable Norman stronghold. But Roger's strategic acumen extended beyond construction. The castle's placement on the Arun was no accident. The river was both shield and supply line, a natural moat against invaders and a conduit for resources. This foresight ensured that Arundel Castle was not merely a military installation, but a lifeline in the Norman hold over southern England. And the keep itself is a tale of transformation. Its initial timber form was eventually encased in stone, employing a banded masonry technique that alternated layers of local flint with the lighter tones of Caen stone. And this design both fortified the structure and created a striking pattern that enhanced its aesthetic and structural integrity. Now, as we well know, Arundel's story continued well past Roger's death in 1094, witnessing sieges, royal intrigues, and marriages that would introduce new blood and new chapters to its storied walls. In the next chapter, we'll dive into the legendary guests and hosts that graced the halls of Arundel over the centuries. Arundel Castle has charmed a parade of English monarchs through the centuries, serving up a platter of grand feasts and high-stakes political intrigue, all while doubling as a royal pied-à-terre. And indeed, the castle's entanglement with the echelons of power stretches from the Norman invasion to the crisp folds of the Victorian age. Now, the castle's initial brush with royalty sprouted in the 12th century during King Henry I's reign. Following the demise of Roger de Montgomery, the original Norman mastermind behind the castle, Henry bestowed the fortress and its verdant surroundings to his second wife, Adeliza of Louvain, as part of her dower. Adeliza's subsequent marriage to William d'Aubigny, who was soon anointed the first Earl of Arundel, kicked off a flurry of architectural enhancements, most notably the stone shell keep that crowned the motte. Amidst this backdrop of construction, the castle hosted a crucial chapter in the anarchy, a bruising civil war for the English throne between King Stephen and Empress Matilda. In 1139, after docking nearby, Matilda took shelter at Arundel, enjoying the hospitality of her stepmother, Adeliza. Enraged, King Stephen swiftly encircled the castle, but decided to let Matilda continue her journey to Bristol, sparing Arundel any war scars. Fast forward to the 16th century, and Arundel Castle had woven itself into the fabric of the influential Howard family. The castle transitioned into Howard hands via the marriage of Mary Fitzalan to Thomas Howard, the fourth Duke of Norfolk. However, Thomas's tangled plot to overthrow Elizabeth I and install Mary, Queen of Scots, as ruler led to his tragic execution. The castle's saga took a dramatic turn during the English Civil War, a stark period marked by the clash of royalist and parliamentarian swords. Its strategic significance and stout defences made it a coveted prize, and the conflict saw Arundel Castle change allegiances multiple times, each shift leaving a lasting imprint on its venerable walls. In December 1643, royalist forces under Lord Hopton claimed the castle, bolstering it with a robust garrison. However, this control was fleeting. By month's end, Sir William Waller, a cunning parliamentarian commander, besieged Arundel. Despite the royalists' efforts to fortify their stronghold, the harsh winter and the numerical and artillery superiority of the parliamentarians led to the royalists' capitulation on the 6th of January 1644. The parliamentarian triumph at Arundel was thus a crucial setback for the royalist cause in the region. It allowed the parliamentarians to tighten their grip on Sussex and cut off royalist strongholds. Furthermore, the parliamentarians, determined to thwart any royalist resurgence, ordered the slighting of the castle, a calculated move to strip it of any military utility leaving its mighty architecture in ruins. Yet, the castle's woes were far from over. Therefore, Arundel Castle fell victim to the ravages of time and political tumult during the late 17th and early 18th centuries. Once a formidable fortress, its glory days dimmed as the castle was eclipsed by the allure of more fashionable urban estates. Owned by the prestigious Dukes of Norfolk, Arundel Castle's decline was not sudden, but rather a gradual surrender to the elements and the era's political shifts. Sadly, the Howards often turned their attentions to their London residence, Norfolk House. There, the pull of political manoeuvrings and the glitter of social galas held more appeal than the maintenance of a draughty old castle set amidst the less frequented landscapes. And the neglect was palpable. Essential repairs were deferred, allowing the relentless English weather to breach the castle's defences. The once sturdy stone walls, left unchecked, began to succumb to the slow but steady assault of wind and rain. Interiors, once echoing with the steps of nobility, began to host only silence and decay, as wooden beams and stonework alike fell prey to the relentless march of time. Despite these adversities, the Howards remained the castle's owners, albeit inattentive ones. The family's gaze was fixed firmly on their urban engagements, leaving Arundel to languish as a picturesque ruin, more useful as a romantic backdrop than a residence. This lack of attention was emblematic of a broader trend among the nobility, who found themselves grappling with the financial and social upheavals that swept through England, reshaping priorities and altering the landscape of aristocratic life. By the turn of the 18th century, Arundel Castle was not merely aging, it was verging on the uninhabitable. Thus, it was only towards the end of the century that efforts to restore the castle began to take shape, driven perhaps by a renewed interest in its historical and architectural significance. The 18th century's reimagining of Arundel Castle under Charles Howard, the spirited drunken Duke, and 11th Duke of Norfolk, kicked off an audacious revamp in 1787. Motivated by a zest to both entertain and reside within its storied walls, Howard set about mending scars left by the English Civil War, elevating the castle from mere fortress to a palace of opulence and comfort. Indeed, his penchant for grandiosity is perhaps best encapsulated in the library, a sanctuary of books that today stands as a symbol of his refined taste in design. This refurbishment alone was good enough to host a memorable visit by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert in December 1846. You see, the 13th Duke of Norfolk, Henry Charles Howard, had spruced up the castle for their arrival, commissioning fresh furniture for the royal suite. The town joined in the celebration, erecting a triumphal arch and lighting the castle's keep with a fiery salute. Queen Victoria, charmed by the castle's allure and the spirited reception, penned in her diary her pleasure at the small but very cheerful accommodations. The visit was marked by opulent feasts in the transformed baronial chapel, with the table shining under the glow of gold candelabras and framed by historic coronation cups. Next, Henry Fitzalan Howard, the 15th Duke of Norfolk, approached an even more elaborate restoring of Arundel Castle with youthful vigour and a profound sense of legacy. Inheriting the dukedom at a tender age in 1847, he embarked on a restoration saga in the 1870s that would span decades, and his mission was to mesh the majestic echoes of the past with the conveniences of the present. Under the watchful eye of architect Charles Alban Buckler, the castle underwent what could only be described as a Victorian metamorphosis. The Duke's vision brought forth a new chapel, its Gothic revival bones crafted between 1894 and 1898, boasting Purbeck marble and a feast of stained glass and intricate carvings, each a whisper of medieval grandeur reborn. Yet, it was the broader canvas of the Gothic revival that truly transformed Arundel Castle. The castle's interiors were transformed with the addition of Gothic elements, including pointed arches, ribbed vaults, and elaborate stone carvings. The Baron's Hall, for example, is a distinguished exercise in mid-13th century Gothic style, with its Purbeck marble, rich stone carving, and Hardman stained glass. The chapel, another significant addition, features Gothic wrought iron standard lights and other period-appropriate fixtures, enhancing the sumptuous quality of the architecture. In addition to the architectural enhancements, the 15th Duke also focused on modernizing the castle's infrastructure. Arundel Castle became one of the first English country houses to be fitted with electric lighting, central heating, and integral firefighting equipment. The installation of these modern amenities was a significant undertaking, with the cost of electricity alone amounting to over £36,000. The Duke also ensured that the castle's water supply, which was gravity-fed, served both the castle and the town of Arundel. Preserving the majesty of Arundel Castle has been an ongoing mission, marked by significant conservation endeavours. The Norman Keep, the castle's oldest portion dating back to 1067, recently underwent a once-in-a-century facelift, and part of this monumental effort included the restoration of opulent 270-year-old wall hangings. The Gobelin masterpieces from the Nouvelles Indes collection, crafted circa 1750, underwent a meticulous process of removal, cleansing and reinstallation, underscoring the castle's dedication to its historical treasures. These days, technological tools have become essential allies in safeguarding the architectural splendor of Arundel Castle, and techniques such as 3D laser scanning and photogrammetry have enabled precise documentation of the castle's elaborate architecture and ornamental details. These digital methodologies foster the creation of exact replicas for restoration purposes and conserve digital archives for posterity. Moreover, cutting-edge structural health monitoring systems are employed to track environmental and structural parameters, including vibrations and humidity. These systems deliver crucial real-time insights, allowing conservators and engineers to preemptively tackle potential issues, thereby securing the castle's structural integrity for future generations to admire and explore.